Hello everyone. So welcome to today's daily news analysis. As always, Hindu newspapers, Delhi edition. Let us look at what all things are there in the front page. Suspense in Jharkhand as CM Soren faces disqualification. So yeah, disqualification on the grounds of office of profit. So EC, Election Commission, is understood to have sent its recommendations in office of profit allegation. Okay. So it is said that the Jharkhand Chief Minister, the most important person, one of the most important person. So he allocated to himself mining lease. So he got allocated. Jharkhand is a lot of mines are there. So he was in position of power, and he provided to himself mines. The mines again from here he can earn revenue. He can earn money out of it. So he's profiting out of the office or the power which he has. So office of profit in that sense. So Election Commission is said to have sent its recommendation in office of profit allegation. Okay, so this is it. Now it's a good time to revise polity, Lakshmikant. Obviously I can't really show you, so yeah, so let us see. So first, what are the grounds for disqualification? The grounds for disqualification, they are from two bases. One is Article 102 of the Constitution, that a member of parliament will be disqualified from membership if. So we have this thing, and the first point over here is he holds any office of profit under the union or state government. So that is one thing. And then there are other disqualifications which the Constitution itself provides. Article 102. Article 102 says he is disqualified under any law by Parliament. If Parliament makes a law and if that person is violative of that, then again a person may be disqualified. So this is given in the Representation of People's Act 1951. Okay, so Office of Profit is in Article 102, so we'll remain with that only. Okay, so let us see what is this article, what is it saying? Office of Profit. So Office of Profit is very, very important. Question has already been asked with this Arvind Kejriwal thing also it happened. So yeah, let us see this. So it's very controversial. Yeah. The basic idea of Office of Profit was that parliamentarians or legislature, be it at the level of state, be it at the level of union. So here it is state, Jharkhand. So the legislators should not be handed over executive post or any office of profit, like they cannot be minister or anything from where they can earn money from the executive. That was the basic idea. So that was the idea overall. So when we look at the office of profit, it is about the legislature not having a conflict with the executive or conflict of interest with the executive. So intent is there should be no conflict between duties and interests of an elected member with the government. So that should be the idea. The legislators might be susceptible to government influence and may not discharge their constitutional mandate fairly. Fine. So that is the idea actually. It doesn't stop a person to, let's say, a minister is like Navjot Singh Sidhu. So he was also in this Kapil Sharma show. So they are allowed to do their occupations. So for the purpose of Office of Profit in general, they are not ministers, the sector are not stopped from doing their other activities. They can continue to do so. So let us see. We need more clarity on this aspect over here. Okay. Let's move on. Malware found in 5 phones. No proof it's Pegasus, says panel. Fine. If you remember, a Pegasus controversy had taken place. Pegasus is a spyware, so which can be installed in your mobile phone, electronic devices, and from where any entity can spy what information is there. They can use the camera on the mobile phone or mic of the mobile phone to hear you, and the intelligence agencies can do that. So a document got leaked sometime last year. And in that document, lot of ministers, judges, members of the opposition, their names were also revealed. It was said that their electronic devices have been infected with the spyware known as Pegasus. Okay, so judges were also there. So that was the all controversy. So naturally, a committee was formed, and they were looking at the if the devices of these people were infected or not, judges. So malware was found in 5 phones. Right. So malware is anything that is bad, maladministration, right? So malware. So it was found in 5 phones. No proof if it is Pegasus. So this committee found that yes, there are some viruses, there are some bad things in your mobile phones, but that doesn't mean that there was actually Pegasus. So for that, there is no proof. And one very controversial thing that happened was the committee that was finding this, they said that the government was not cooperative. And this is what the Chief Justice of India has picked up. Okay. Let's move forward. So yeah, political horse trading and all those things. 8,000 tons of waste lifted from landfills. So this is obviously Delhi. So landfill. So you know all that construction related debris and all that waste. So that has been taken up by the private sector, private companies, so that this can be reused in other sectors, maybe for construction activities, for road making activities. So in that it can be reused. So that is what actually landfill, recycling, reuse, segregation of waste. So these activities should be done so that we can manage the landfill better. It's better to actually have a separate analysis on this issue altogether. Okay, this will be GS3, urban environment. So in that sense, it should be GS3. Atrocities against Dalits. So National Commission for Scheduled Caste. So this agency, National Commission for Scheduled Caste, is looking into these atrocities. Recently, a child was beaten by the teacher who happened to be, there's an allegation that he was basically drinking water from a pot that was not specified for him, and he was beaten for that reason. So there's an allegation. So basically the caste-based thing, caste-based discrimination. Fine. So that has set the National Commission for Scheduled Caste into motion, and they were investigating, and they have again raised a flag that the state government is not doing adequate much measures to deal with this issue. We found and flagged several issues in the functioning of all departments. Okay, now this is very, very important. Missing pot and the unmissable caste divide. So yeah, this is about Rajasthan itself, and especially the village in which this incident had taken place, the village school in which it had taken place, and there the people were interviewed. Now, why I feel this is important, normally I'll not do it, but this I feel important. One, we get a greater insight into the issue of this caste divide. We get a greater insight, we get a greater understanding. It's important from understanding the point of view of society, GS1, right? Society is in GS1, so we get a perspective on this. Further, when we read more on something, it also helps us with our essay writing. We know more about issues and all those things. Okay. Yeah. So I want you to read this. I want you to find the heading. If you can just Google this, it will help you. It should help you. Otherwise, I have this underlined altogether. So let's do this over here. Okay. So first of all, Rajasthan is one of the biggest, not one of the biggest, geographically speaking, it is the biggest state. One second. Yeah, it is the biggest state, geographically speaking, and has a scheduled caste population of 18%. So 18%, then there is scheduled tribes, Rajputs are 9% and Brahmins at 7%. So scheduled caste population is actually the maximum in, if we look at the breakup over here. And yet, if you look at the cases of atrocities against this community, even numerically speaking, they are greater in number, and still we find that the atrocities against the community is actually on the plus side. They are ranking fourth after Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Madhya Pradesh. So basically, if you look at it this way, these are again Bimaru states. Okay. So one is, this data is obviously from the NCRB data, crime, the complaints that have been registered for atrocities. Besides this, there are a lot of other things that are taking place. Okay. So one interview was taken, and he says that we cannot get a haircut. So we cannot get services, basic services that we should be getting, like haircut, taking water from the well. So we are not getting that. Even for a basic thing like haircut, we have to go to an other village. So we have to go to a distance, and then we can get the haircut. The discrimination of public service, and this is violative of which article? Article 15, part 2. So please read this article 15, prohibition of discrimination. Article 15.2 says the use of access to shops, public restaurants, hotel, places of public entertainment. So this is not just for the state. Article 15, normally fundamental rights are restrictions on the state, but this is also on the individuals, private individuals, that you cannot discriminate on these grounds. And also the use of wells, tanks, bathing, anything of public that is there for general public. So you cannot discriminate on the basis of caste, religion, race, sex, etc., or place of birth. Okay. Besides this, you will come across, you can see this from the point of view of case study also. A groom was beaten up by upper caste men for riding a horse, and somebody wanted to wear a sherwani. So sherwani is associated with the red for the upper caste. So how can a person from a lower caste wear it? So that way. A person was killed. Here is the photo, a COVID worker. So for having a mustache. So this is, these are incidents that keep taking place overall. In fact, you know what, this thing like marriage procession is to take place from a Dalit person insists that I want to take this horse or whatever. And but if this takes place, there will be a chaos, there will be right-like situation. So what measures would you take? Something like that can be picked up for your case study also, ethics case study. And naturally, you have to uphold the law. Okay, and these are fundamental rights. Okay, then you look at this over here, tradition, not discrimination. These are traditions, these have been taking place, these are pratha. So these are normal things. So things are actually normalized. So it is not just upper caste actually. If you look at it, it is basically normalization of discrimination. So upper caste says that yes, this has to be done in this way. Even the lower caste is more or less on terms with it, that is fine. If this takes place, it is fine, it is a custom. If I go to a temple, if I'm restricted over there, that is a custom. Or if I am not allowed to touch the pious things, that is a norm, so that is fine. So it's not caste. So again, these things, the caste-based things, discrimination actually has been normalized. Okay. One of the things is if you want to identify the house of a person of Harijan community or Meghwalo community, Meghwalo ko ghar kidhar, where is the house of Meghwalo or Harijans? So people have been segregated on the basis of caste. Where are the house of Thakurs? Where do Thakurs live? People have been segregated on the basis of caste. If it is not discrimination, then what it is? Okay. Yahi pratha hai. This is tradition. This is a norm. This keeps taking place. There is nothing wrong with this, and even the Dalits are okay with this thing. Then there is this woman who visits the premises of the temple but doesn't touch the idol. She does it by her own free will. Why? Because she has been taught to do so over here. Nobody has stopped her. She says, nobody has stopped me, but I do it by my own free will. Why? Because I have been taught not to do so. So let's see if she actually does, what happens. Okay. Right, so we are taught to do all this. Then with reference to politics also, Politics is for the upper caste, not for us who works as in carpenter. So it's for the upper caste, and the person from the lower caste is called to remove carcasses of animals, because this is associated with the occupation of the person of the lower caste, so it is associated with that. So they are invited. I mean, they are called for this job, and in fact, that is true for the government itself. This thing had come to light when the flogging of 4 Dalits had taken place. The thing had gone viral, and Dalits had protested at that time and said, "We will not pick up the carcasses," and they dropped animal dead carcass or outside the house of the TC DM also. And then they could not find people to lift that caste issue. Then you see, we are invited to the weddings of the people from the higher caste also, but we have to bring food back to our home and eat. Why? So, but this is normal. We are called to the wedding, but yes, we have to go this thing. We have to go out and have our food this thing. Okay. Even discrimination exists at the death. So cremation grounds have their separate cremation grounds for basis of caste. Okay. Then there is a statement by a retired professor of sociology, and he says talks about that Rajasthan is a feudal state, and that is applicable for all the Bimaru states. In fact, all the states. The panchayats here, mostly governed by Thakurs and Rajputs, work as kangaroo courts, as the upper caste have control over economic resources. So the panchayats also, if something wrong goes, if somebody goes according to the caste also, so they are going to uphold the interest of the people from the upper caste. Okay, so this is there. Yeah, and if some issue takes place in that case also, the government's attitude is that they will give a compensation. So compensation is there to pacify the victims rather than addressing the issue. That is on the part of the government. And one of the social activists has said that earlier in the pre-independence era, like Mahatma Gandhi, Ambedkar, so they were actually working on eradication of untouchability. So the kind of work done to eradicate untouchability in pre-independence days is completely absent post-independence. Okay, so now the school issue thing takes place, that the school is there, no discrimination is taking place in the school, this is open to all. But then we have this issue of a child being beaten brutally. It died because of having it in a different pot. Now the school teacher denies this. Okay, so this is there. I mean, yeah. So this is there. We see wrongs, at every level. This is the problem that is there. So GS1 society, GS4 case study, essay. So yeah, that will help you. So let's go. Let's read some more news. So states news. Suspended BJP MLA arrested for second time in 3 days. So if you are from the opposition, this is Telangana. I was looking at how can this happen. So this is Telangana. So BJP is in the opposition over there. Okay. Yeah, this was very interesting. I was wondering what it is. So this is in Visakhapatnam Beach. The Second World War pillbox resurfaces. So what is this pillbox? It's basically a bunker which was used by the British to keep an eye on for enemy attacks on the coast. A state party looking forward to play a role in national politics, and the best way I think that would be in forming a Gathbandhan against the BJP. Most likely, you can expect on that lines. And this is Telangana, so this is also happening in Telangana only, Hyderabad. Yeah. Freebies, a judicial head at a multi-layered issue. I'm not doing this. You wish, you can please read it. Okay. Rainbow of Hope. So Rainbow movement is associated with the rights of the LGBTQIA community, right? So transgender issue. Okay. So what has happened is, I'm just covering what has happened is that in Tamil Nadu, and in fact in any state actually, we tend to use this slurs we derogatory terms that we use for the certain group of people, in this case, transgenders. So the government has looked to block the use of slurs or these negative words that are used to identify transgenders. So that is a positive step, and it has also come up with a glossary, a set of words that can be used to, maybe a politically correct word that can be used to define transgenders. Okay, so yeah, this is it. Then we can always look into the issue of what are we doing for the welfare of the transgender, what are the issues and the challenges, what are the Transgender Rights Act, so Transgender Rights Act. So with reference to that, we can always work on that issue. Should India change its policy on the Rohingya? Fine, just a second. So this is, why I like these things when we have a former bureaucrat who's being interviewed. So here we have Vivek Kajju and we have Meenakshi Ganguly, a human rights activist. I think I'll do this very, very briefly because it will take me a lot of time otherwise. So briefly, this issue: India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Northeast also, we share a boundary with the Myanmar over here. Right. So in the coastal side over here along the Indian Ocean region, there is Rohingya population who have migrated from Bangladesh. They are said to be Bengalis, so coming from Bangladesh and settled over here in this region along the coastal side. They have been one of the most persecuted communities. After Jews, it is said that it is the Rohingyas. So Rohingyas is a persecuted community in a Buddhist majority Myanmar. And most of the atrocities took place during the time of the military government, Junta government in Myanmar. Now again, they are back in the power. Okay. Now because of these atrocities, the genocide that took place, some of them have gone to Bangladesh, some of them have settled in India, right? By some means or the other, they are refugees in India. Refugees is when because of some political reason you are back into you move to another place. Okay. And many other parts of the world. In fact, India, they were saying the population that has migrated is not so much. We know that India has only about 40,000 or so Rohingyas. Bangladesh is at about 7 lakh Rohingyas. Saudi Arabia is also having more Rohingyas than what India has. Fine, so that is the issue. So there are Rohingyas in our country. Fine. No, morally speaking, refugees are there, a persecuted community is there, and speaking from international ethics point of view also, any refugee is there, a person who's troubled, our country should provide them, embrace them with open arms, do whatever is needful for their welfare, whatever is required. But when refugees come to our country, naturally, it is a burden on resources of the state. It's a burden. There are always concern of changing demographics, and especially BJP, actually, the ruling party, supporters, naturally, they are very critical of this Rohingya issue and they talk about the changes in the demography. And naturally, if people, even in my this thing, if they take, I'll hear people, why are these people here? Our demography is getting changed. These people will take up jobs. So such things, they start taking place. Then there is always an element of extremist militant movements. So Rohingyas, refugees, illegal, this thing, some of them are indoctrinated, easy to indoctrinate them. So there is always a scope of rise in militancy, etc. So there is always a national security perspective, internal security risk. Right, so this is an issue over here. Okay. Now the thing is, what should the government do? That's the issue over here. Should they, vocally, the BJP party, the government in power, they say that we will repatriate them, we will send them back. we will send them back over here. Okay. Uh, Secondly, India says that we are not bound by the Refugee Convention, the UN Convention for Refugees. We are not bound by that because we haven't signed that thing. So in that there is something known as principle of, but in anyways, we morally speaking, there is something known as principle of non-refoulement. That is principle of refoulement means sending the refugee back into their country, back into the place where they have been persecuted. So we cannot send them back where they are being persecuted, otherwise that would make their life into the danger. So principle of non-refoulement, that is, we will not do it. So there are some grounds for that. I think this is better. It is a principle of customary international law as it applies even to the states that are not parties to the 1951 convention. So we are not party to it, but more or less it is accepted. It's a norm that we should do it. So non-refoulement refers to generic repatriation of people, including refugees, into war zones and other disaster districts. Okay. So we should not be sending, I mean, on one hand, we want them out, naturally. We want them to be repatriated, but what do we do with that also? Because Myanmar may not take it, and if we push them, our relations will go bad with them. We cannot, I mean, with Bangladesh also, it will become difficult. So how do we tackle this issue? So we want to, I mean, all countries would like to do that, and we are not signatories of this Refugee Convention of the UN. But overall, if we look at a country, our performance with reference to human rights and refugee, this thing is much better, even as compared to the developed country. Even UK is saying that we are going to repatriate people, we are going to send back, we are going to identify the people, and we are going to send the illegal migrants from our country. So our track record is much better. Okay. Now recently a controversy had erupted where the urban minister had said that the flats that are made for the EWS in Delhi, so these will be used to settle the Rohingyas. Now if you look at this thing, EWS, so something that is a resource for the economically weaker sections, that will, the empty plots that will be used to fill this thing. So Delhi government has a problem with that. Later, Home Ministry clarified that we are going to deport them, but this will be foul of the principle of non-refoulement. So this is an ethical dilemma. International relations, GS2 IR. Should we have a refugee policy? Should we have uniformity in that? Should we sign the Refugee Convention? So these are GS2 issues, international relations. Okay, next is very interesting, important from GS3 mains. This is about obviously privatization of the banks. So let us see what it's saying. So in general, there is a push from the center to privatize banks. We have a lot of this public sector banks, so they should be privatized. Now, if you look at the public sector banks or any institution, these are not merely, we cannot measure their performance merely on basis of profits that they earn. Like private companies, what are the profits, what are the returns that the shareholders are giving? So that is the basic criteria. But when we talk about the public sector, it is obviously commercial returns, obviously profits, but it is also about what is it, how it is contributing to the socio-economic development of the country. How is it leading to the inclusive growth of the country? So that parameter is also there, which we need to consider. And in generally, we see that the public sector bank is more focused on the socio-economic aspect. They have to balance here. Private sector is only profit-centric, mostly profit-centric. Okay, in an article titled Privatization of Public Sector Banks. So this is a report that is emanating from the Reserve Bank of India. They have said that we should have a sense of caution. We should have a sense of caution if we should move privatize the public sector banks. Right, so there should be caution over here. So let us see why. One, you see this, the one in orange is private sector banks and public sector banks is in blue. So if we look at the rural penetration, that is more bank branches in the rural areas. So we find there is more rural branches of the, and considerably more of the, this thing, public sector banks, government banks as compared to the private sector banks. While if we look at the metropolitans and the urban landscape, and even more than semi-urban again, and if you look at this thing, the considerably more in the places where there is more money in the economy, metropolitans. So private sector, its contribution is more, their presence is more, while as compared to the rural. So if we want financial inclusion, we want rural areas to be coming under the financial net, banking net. Naturally, public sector bank is doing much better. In fact, what is not mentioned is Reserve Bank of any company that wants to open a bank in a country, they have to have a license from the Reserve Bank of India. That's why they are known as scheduled commercial banks, that is listed commercial banks. Scheduled means list. Okay, and so they have to get a license. And one of the consideration is that if you having a branch in urban area, you have to have, I think, have to have more branches in the rural area. So there also it is seen that there is a norm, there is a rule, but private sector actually is on the wrong side of that rule, but the regulator is not able to do much on that count. Okay, then comes the rural lending. So here again we see that the share of the, look at this, please look at this, public sector banks, private banks. So whereas public sector banks over here and share of rural lending is much more in percentage terms as compared to the private sector banks, very low. There's no comparison only. Then if you look at, we want to give more loans to the agriculture sector, right? Industry, they get loans, but what about the agriculture? So here again we find the share of the rural, the public sector banks is much more as compared to public sector banks. When it comes to infra lending, for infrastructure, it may be a risky this thing. It's a long term, money has to be given for long term. Bond market is not very well developed. So public sector banks step in for infra lending. So where is this public sector bank? Where is private sector bank? It's huge difference over here. Right. So, if this thing comes, should be privatized or not, you have all the facts, all the data that is required for you. And these are also parameters. I mean, you get the important parameters, highlights that can be part of your answer also. So you don't have to make up points. These are the points that should be there. Kerala gets it right. What right? This last some years back, actually, the Idukki floods had taken place in Kerala, and so when the floods are taking place, when there is more rainwater, naturally the water collected in the dam is also a lot more, and at that time they had to open this gate and allow flow of more water. So rains are there, plus more water coming from the dam also. So what they have gotten right at this time is that with greater inputs, with greater, with technology, they were able to release water much before, at the right time, before the rain. They were able to predict the rains much better. So they already had discharged the water. So they were, I mean, the condition in Kerala is not very good even now, but still, it seems they have got it right. This timing, they have got it right. Okay, some facts now. 6,700 corruption cases probed by the CBI, and obviously we have the CVC. How we can use it? Governance, GS2, CBI is again center, CVC for center only, Central Vigilance Commission. What is the government doing to deal with corruption? How much corruption is there in our country? What measures should be taken? All those things, right? Yeah. So in that light, we get a key fact over here. In fact, we can also quote Kautilya's Kautilya's theory on corruption, and he said Sam, Dam, Dand, Bed. Right? So, I mean, this is the Bed part, that is vigilance, and Dand. Okay. Next is national highways that are being constructed. These are good facts. So 1.8 lakh kilometer length of national highways to be built in 2025. And this pace has really augmented if we compare it with 2015, which was 63,000 kilometer. Right, so this space has really increased. But there is one more thing actually I would like to add is how the roads are actually calculated. So earlier, when the roads were being calculated, that has changed. So data may not have. So, if you go in one direction, so one lane is there, another lane is coming this side. So earlier this was again counted as like 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer. But now it is like, let's say this was X kilometer earlier. Now it is calculated at 2X. Lane coming, lane going. So two roads are being constructed, but that wasn't the case earlier. So we have to be mindful of that. But yes, it's a significant thing. Zero carbon emission. This we'll do later. Indian Oil Commission, Indian Oil is doing some steps. There's an article on this. This is your homework. You're supposed to research these things. Yeah. No decision yet on polls. Yesterday we have National Conference of Congress of Jammu and Kashmir, this regional party. They will contest all this thing, and we said that this is going to be a threat to the Gupkar alliance. So now the statement has come from the patriarch of the NC, the main person. No decision yet. Okay. Citing border pacts, China objects to India US drills. I mean, they are doing much worse than us. And which India US drills are taking place? Yudh Abhyas, right? So Yudh Abhyas is taking place. So India and US has this military drill that takes place in high altitude. So sometimes in the Himalayas, sometimes in the Alaskas. Essay to review Prevention of Money Laundering Act order on two aspects. Which two aspects? And we don't have to read this actually. This is sufficient. The Supreme Court on one hand, it is saying, and by the way, what is this? This is the power of the Supreme Court, or power of the judiciary to review. Judicial review. This is the judicial review power. So Supreme Court to review. Okay, what are they reviewing? And we have a lot of articles. So we should actually wait for these things. So Supreme Court is saying that we are okay. We are in principle, we are completely in support with the efforts to prevent black money in circulation and money laundering. But there are these concerns that we have to listen. What are these issues? So one is something to do with enforcement case information report. So the recent amendment that has been made, it deprives the accused the copy of enforcement case information report. So that is one thing. Second thing is it is looking into the issue of transfers the burden of proof of innocence onto shoulders of accused instead of the prosecution. So earlier it was obviously you are presumed innocent till proven guilty. This has been changed. It is now for the, if a charge has been put on you, it's assumed that you are guilty. You have to prove that you are not guilty. So this transfers the issue of transferring the proof of the burden of proof of innocence. So these are to this thing, or this thing, reversal of presumption of innocence. So we can have this presumption of innocence is much better term actually. Okay, so labor codes empower workers. Where is he saying this? Prime Minister Modi. And yeah, we should be prepared for the upcoming mains also about the labor codes. In fact, any mains actually, it's a long pending thing. So National Labor Conference, who all are there? Labor secretaries and the Minister of Labor. We have the Prime Minister also, since it is at central level. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. I think labor codes. they are there. We have to have an analysis on that. Aircraft carrier Vikrant to be commissioned on September 2. India, Bangladesh discuss river water sharing. Which river water would they be talking about? They're talking about the Tista River. Tista River, this thing is very, very important. So this is basically a conflict between this in India, which means the state of West Bengal. So Tista flows through this, and Bangladesh. So you should look at the map over here. Basic idea you should have. So we have Sikkim, Bangladesh, Bengal, parts of Bengal, and then it flows into Bangladesh. Overall, there is not much problem actually. During the summer months, during the drought time where Bengal, we also need water, they said we also need water. It's at that time that the problem actually arises. Please have a look from where the Tista River is flowing. Very, very important. This is a wrong map. Yeah. So long pending issue. In fact, we can also look at it from a more larger perspective, like India Bangladesh relations. What are the issues between them? So that perspective. Bank credit growth accelerated to 14.2% in quarter ended June. RBI said credit growth has been broad-based, has outpaced deposit growth. I think this is sufficient. We don't really have to go deeper. Okay. If you want the economy to grow, if anybody wants the economy to grow, then in that case, there should be more investments into the economy. Investment in augmenting the production capacity so that more production can take place. So more investment should go. That's the basic idea. Or in other words, or in other sense, it could also be investment, or it could be I want to buy a car, I want to buy a house. So for that, I don't have money. I'll borrow it from the bank, and I'll keep paying the EMIs. But when I do that, it is spurring demand. So credit growth is important. We want the bank to give more and more of credit in a sustainable way, and this will be good for the economy. Right? Okay, if there is more demand, the industrial sector would like to increase the investment to meet the demand. Okay, so this has taken place. It's after a long time that we are hearing about the credit growth. Okay. Now, this credit growth is not specific to, let's say, the industrial sector or the corporate sector. What the RBI is saying, it is being broad-based. Means every single sector, every single aspect has been beneficiary of this credit growth. And it has outpaced deposit growth. What does this mean? So, one thing could be, we all deposit our money with the banks. So how much money is deposit if the same, maybe as the same percentage, maybe this much percentage has increased. So this much percentage, same percentage wise, the credit growth has increased. Then that is not really growth. What is left with the bank, what is coming to the bank is lending much, much more. So it reflects the confidence of the banking sector also. So bank is lending much more than what is coming into the bank. So it is outpaced deposit growth. And one of the credit rating agencies is saying that we have sufficient forex with us to manage the difficulty in this currency, the fall that has taken place and all those things. We are well placed to look into this issue. Strong growth gives RBI rooms for rate increases. So RBI can increase rate, they can increase the rate, and that will be useful for checking inflation in the economy. Okay. China faces job crunch as lockdowns retard growth, right? So there is a fear of COVID. So moment they have it, they say, okay, fine, lockdown. So when they keep doing this lockdown thing, then as a result of this, naturally, there is uncertainty with reference to economic activities. So the economic expansion will slow down. You cannot plan. If industrialists are not able to plan for the future, so it is affecting the growth in China. Right. So the zero COVID strategy of the Chinese. Department of Telecom eases telecom infra norms to boost networks. Fine. Indian Oil to spend rupees 2 lakh crore for net zero emissions. So, this quite contradictory actually, because Indian Oil is making fuel. Fuel is again contributing to pollution. But what they are saying is the refining activity for the fuel, petroleum comes and petroleum converts into petrol, diesel, etc. and the mining, etc. What all activities are taking place? They want that all these refining, mining activities taking place. So in this, the production activities, this should be net zero emissions. This, we should not be dependent on this fuel. Rather, solar, wind, all those things should be utilized. So they want to have electrification, that too carbon neutral. I mean, solar renewables that they want to use. International reviews now. India's vote to allow Zelensky's speech was not against Russia. So very simple, unnecessary controversy actually. Zelensky if he has to speak in the United Nations, naturally he cannot. It's a war that is going on. So he wanted to attend it virtually. So should Ukraine's president be allowed to attend virtually? So this issue was being put to vote. Russia naturally said no, this should not be allowed. India said that he should be allowed to vote. Right? He should be allowed to vote. He should be allowed to express himself, and they should also pave way for dialogue that will take place. So technically, yes, I mean, India voted against Russia, but then it is not really against Russia at the same time. Right? We are not saying that Russia has committed war crimes or anything, nothing of that sort. It's only with reference to Zelensky getting permission to speak virtually in UN. Okay, next, sports news over here. Right? Okay. So this basically concludes our DNA. So thank you for streaming to our channel, IASPrimers, with me, Shubhashish. Bye-bye, all the best.